Good afternoon, everyone. I call this meeting of the Labor and Workforce Development Committee to order today. Today is Thursday, October 9th, and I am your committee chair, Councilor Loretta Smith, representing District 1. Vice Chair Mitch Green is seated next to me. Craig is out today, so we are joined by Christopher Herr from Council Operations, and Keelan McLeod joins us from the Council Clerk's Office. Keelan, could you please call the roll?
Green.
Here.
Dunphy.
Here.
Canal.
Here.
Novick.
Here.
Smith.
Here. Christopher, will you please read the statement of conduct, please?
Welcome to the meeting of Labor and Workforce Development Committee. To testify before this committee in person or virtually, you must sign up in advance of the committee agenda at www.portland.gov/council/agenda/labor-and-workforce-development-committee or by calling 311. Information on engaging with the committee can be found at this link. Registration for virtual testimony closes 1 hour prior to the meeting. In-person testifiers must sign up before the agenda item is heard. If public testimony will be taken on an item, individuals may testify for 3 minutes unless the chair states otherwise. Your microphone will be muted when your time is over. The chair preserves order. Disruptive conduct such as shouting, refusing to conclude your testimony when your time is up, or interrupting others' testimony or committee deliberations will not be allowed. If you cause a disruption, a warning will be given. Further disruption will result in ejection from the meeting. Anyone who fails to leave once ejected is subject to arrest for trespass. Additionally, the committee may take a short recess and reconvene virtually. Your testimony should address the matter being considered. When testifying, state your name for the record. If you're a lobbyist, identify the organization you represent. A virtual testifier should unmute themselves when the clerk calls your name. Thank you.
I want to say to the clerk and to the body that I want to take a point of personal privilege and to acknowledge one of my colleagues and friends in East Portland who served in House District 48. And her name is Representative Ho Nguyen. She passed away yesterday of cancer, somberly. And Representative Nguyen, she was a wonderful soul, and she fought bravely against cancer. She was not only a natural supporter of business and labor, but she was a champion to many. Ho will be deeply missed, but her kindness and spirit will always be remembered. I was proud to support her, proud to be a part of the East Portland delegation and honor her journey. My heart is rather heavy today, and may you rest in peace, Ho. You will be missed, but never forgotten. Thank you. Okay. Could you please read the first agenda item?
Item 1, wage theft and its harms.
Thank you, Keelan. Today, we're joined by Kate Sussman from Northwest Workers. Could you come up? From the Northwest Workers Justice Project, who will lead our initial discussion. Wage theft is a prominent problem in Oregon, but as we will learn later today, there are efforts underway to address the problem, including new state laws that will go into effect on January 1st. We will be discussing wage theft generally. It harms in some type of way workers who are most affected, with an eye towards what we can do in the city of Portland to combat these problems. Ms. Sussman, please introduce yourself and begin your presentation. Thank you so much for being here this afternoon. This is important. And I want folks to know that wage theft is typically thought of as an employer withholding part of an employee's paycheck, but is that the only way that wage theft occurs? And you will also be talking about, are there other types of wage theft that we should be looking at? And if there are any other ways that we can close some of the gaps in the current legislation. I'm looking to do that with ordinances here on the city level, but I want you to go ahead and go forward and let me know your name and go right into your presentation.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. My name is Kate Sussman. I'm with the Northwest Workers Justice Project. It's great to be with you all here today. And I've got a short, about 10-minute presentation here. Happy to be interrupted if anything's unclear or if you have questions. I thought I would just do a brief overview of my organization. Our mission is on the screen here and some photos of our recent work. We basically have 3 programs, one of which is legal representation. I'm an attorney. There's a group of 7 attorneys who take on these types of cases. We also do worker leadership and development and education in the community, both for our clients and for the immigrant worker community at large. And we do legislative and policy work, mostly at the state level. Like you just mentioned, Councillor Smith, wage theft can take a lot of forms. This is a not comprehensive list, but some of the more common ones. The first and maybe most obvious is paying less than you've agreed to pay someone, whether that's less than minimum wage or less than another rate you've agreed to. Not paying overtime is very common, and we see that a lot in construction. Paying straight time, your regular rate for overtime. Paying less than the hours worked. I know that I worked 55 hours this week, and you're paying me for 40. Stealing tips, we see a lot in the food service industry. Kickbacks, where you get your paycheck and you have to pay some of it back. Requiring workers to show up early or stay late and not be clocked in for that time. Misclassification, which is a whole other presentation. I won't go down that road in detail, but we see that, and folks are called independent contractors when they're employees, and the employer then doesn't have to pay workers' comp or pay into unemployment or certain payroll taxes. And we also see that on job sites with prevailing wage or union jobs where you should be paid at one classification and you're paid at a lower one. And then the last one I listed is payroll deductions, whether that's for tools or other necessary parts of your job or some other kind of kickback. So this is a more national view about wage theft, and I'll go into Oregon in the next slide. But something that I think is a surprising fact is that wage theft actually costs more than all property theft combined in your average year. So this is from an Economic Policy Institute report that I did link here, and I sent out these materials, I believe, as well. But on the year that they studied, wage theft looked like about $18 billion of wages unpaid versus property theft, which was around $15 billion in that year. And there are a few other stats on this slide from a recent article just showing how widespread wage theft is, where we're looking at 17% of all low-wage workers losing an average of 20% of their income in a year, which is a huge amount if you're a low-wage worker, with not a lot of savings, waiting for that next paycheck. And the result, the last bullet here, is a lot of folks are pushed into poverty, can't pay their rent, can't pay their bills, which we see regularly. These are some nice little AI graphics about just showing you some of the industries where we tend to see at Northwest Workers Justice Project. And again, we focus on low-wage jobs. Many of our clients are immigrants. So we see food processing and manufacturing, farm work, not just cannabis, which is the picture there, but all types of farm work, including cannabis. Drivers, Lyft and Uber drivers, who we believe are misclassified as independent contractors, janitorial, construction, and then the folks in the middle are just your average business owner who's not stealing folks' wages. They're affected as well because they have to compete against people who are stealing wages and who are not paying the taxes they should and who are just generally being low road. These are some more national numbers just pointing out that certain industries like construction, transportation, and warehousing are overrepresentative certain populations. So Latina workers in construction, Black workers in transportation and warehousing, and those are areas where we see more wage theft. And I just wanted to point out that folks that are not unionized and folks in low wage jobs often are more vulnerable because standing up and asking for those wages can be really risky if you don't have a union and you need that next paycheck. Here's a chart that Rutgers University on the East Coast, they have taken some interest in Oregon, and they've been working very closely with our state labor agency. And this is a chart from 2010 to 2020 that kind of shows you that not everyone is as likely to suffer from wage theft. And I won't go through each part of the chart, but if you look around the middle, women are about 1.5 times more likely than men. Latina or Hispanic people are about 2 times as likely as white folks, and non-citizens are in many cases more likely than citizens, and that could be a visa worker, that could be a person with a green card, or an undocumented person. So if you're not a citizen, you're much more at risk. This is a little more information on what's happening in Oregon, again, based on Rutgers' study of our situation. This is only minimum wage, which, as we said at the top, is just one of the ways that wage theft shows up. But the rates on the far left there are the highest violation rates. So private households, those would be domestic workers, including, I think, home care workers would be in that category. Restaurants and bars, hotels or accommodation, and then agriculture. This was what was found to have the highest violation rates. On the far right, this data also showed that 18% of personal and home care aides have experienced minimum wage theft in Oregon. And that relates back to an issue that was here last week where I saw Councilor Green with a home care worker who is alleging to be owed a very high number of wages. Again, I'll share all this with you, and I don't want to take more time than is allotted here. This is a sort of compounding issue that in Oregon, folks have started to speak up more, which is great. You can see the historical data here from our partner, the Oregon Center for Public Policy, of folks going to BOLI. And around 2022, BOLI put their complaint form online, which was great. Before that, we had to print it out, fill it out, and mail it. But that resulted in a huge increase. As well as coming out of the pandemic, I think people were paying a lot of attention to their rights as workers. So this has all led to a pretty huge backlog at BOLI. This is a similar graph, but shows that BOLI had a 208% increase over the last 4 years in the number of claims, and they did not have a 208% increase in their budget. They did recently get a budget increase, which is excellent news, and you may have been following that. I'm sorry, I'm stuck on this slide here, but at some point it'll go ahead. I think the next slide was just adding in a few factors that are compounding some of these issues, with BOLI having a backlog that isn't expected to be cleared for years at this point in the wage and hour side of things. So that means that folks, when they really need that wage theft to be addressed, they may have to wait 1, 2, or 3 years. My screen's a bit frozen here, but I was just about at the end of my presentation. I do have some ideas for how the City Council can respond. I don't know if that would be helpful now, but I'd be glad to share a few of those ideas.
That would be great. Could you do that?
Yes. One, and I know we're in a budget crisis, so I'm trying to not focus on the things that might cost a ton of money. One would be the transparency ordinance that I think that the carpenters are going to speak about. I think procurement, that the city, we hold a lot of power when the city procures, and there are some things we're doing to kind of think about that power, but I think there's a lot more we could be doing with procurement. And construction's one area, janitorial, consulting, really anywhere where the city is using that power, making sure that those are high road folks who don't have history of violations, who have good policies, who don't force workers to arbitrate, for example, is an issue I, again, won't go into for time, but there are many nefarious things that employers do that we can make sure they're not doing on the city dime. And then I'll just mention briefly a program that the county stood up before the pandemic, which had to do with deputizing community groups, including ours and others, to go out to job sites focused on construction, talk to workers, ask them, are you being paid properly, review payroll, things like that, and kind of make sure that things are what they appear to be. So I will stop there. I have put this slideshow in the record with some other materials and happy to answer questions or to move on.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I know that our city code can't preempt state and federal law, but there are other limits on what ordinances at the city council can do. So I really appreciate you bringing up the procurement issue and the transparency, and not to redo what they're doing on the federal and the state law, but if there are some ways in which that people are getting walkarounds this, that, you know, just those small little gaps that we can help. I am just trying to reconcile that we're at almost 200% increase in BOLI complaints from 2019, from 1,000 to over 4,000 to date. That is just like alarming to me.
It is alarming, and I would say it's not just BOLI, and this is more anecdotal, but my office and many other employment firms have said that since the pandemic, they're just all underwater. The number of people calling us has increased dramatically, and we're having to turn away, 9 out of 10 or more of the folks who call us.
Thank you. Councilor Green.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thanks for speaking to us today. I'm really compelled by the chart that shows the wage theft claims. Can you pull that back up on the screen, please?
I will do my best. I think my computer is a little bit rickety, but nonprofit stuff. But I think we will get there. And was that the one with the BOLI numbers?
Yeah, it's this one right here. Thank you. So colleagues, this strikes me. So obviously this is terrible, right? So it means, one, we need to be advocating for BOLI to get the resources it needs to respond to this. But it also shows, like, if you were to look at this chart and plot corporate net income tax revenues to the state of Oregon, it would follow that same trend. If you were to plot capital gains tax revenue, it would follow that trend, because the pandemic period was a period where the rich got very rich, but not everyone else benefited. And the poorest, the most vulnerable of our workers, not only didn't receive a share in the overall gains of the economy during that time, but in fact, they were stolen from. So in some sense, we have an obligation to, and I'm really encouraged by my colleague here to be hinting towards some appetite for legislation at the local level, and I will be there to support that. But I'm very alarmed by this, and I really appreciate the chart. And I wonder, thanks for offering some solutions and some potential areas to go. Can you share if there's been some other municipalities that have passed anything in this vein that we could look to? Yes.
I would say that there have been some great things done in other states. I don't love to mention California, but I'm going to mention them. There is a really cool program, I think it's Santa Clara County, where they have, like I was explaining, the deputization program. They have that for other industries. So advocates can go into a restaurant or any type of establishment with some flyers and say, representatives of the county, we want to make sure you know your rights, and if you have issues, here's who to contact. For me, that would be so meaningful, because we kind of know the types of establishments where they're not following all the rules, and wage theft is usually tied to others, health and safety, discrimination, and others. So if we could have folks that were, like that's that type of core who could go out into the community, I think that would be amazing. Seattle, again, sorry to mention a neighboring state, not Oregon, but they have, the city of Seattle has an incredible labor standards enforcement office. It's very well funded. They fund community groups to work with them, and they enforce local ordinances around wage theft. So those are two examples that for me are quite impactful, also might cost some money, especially the setting up a labor enforcement office like they did in Seattle.
I appreciate those suggestions, and I'll just note that it's costing everyone a lot of money right now when workers are stolen from.
That's right.
And I think, like, it's not lost on me the relationship between what Trump is doing in America right now to conduct a program of mass deportation and terror on our immigrant community. And so colleagues being able to pass legislation that deputizes folks in the community who want to find ways to show up and stand up with them seems like an opportunity we can help facilitate as legislators. So really appreciate these ideas. Thank you.
Thank you.
Here. Here, Counselor Green, I am with you, and that's why I'm so glad that Ms. Ostman was here today to be able to explain, what does wage theft look like? And oftentimes we think that it's just a totally immigrant issue where people are going to get folks to fix things in their house, but this is obviously widespread. I want to thank you for the informative and interesting presentation we were hoping for, and you did that. And we appreciate you joining us today, and I appreciate you actually looking to work with us. Before I totally end you, I want Councilor Novick to speak and ask you some questions too.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just curious, what does a wage bond look like? How does that work?
Well, we have such a bond through the state, the CCB, the Construction Contractors Board, and it's something that workers can't access if they are not paid properly. However, the one through the state is $3,000 total per project. So that means, once in a great while, we do go after it because it may be our only option, but basically it's something that an employer pays ahead of time, like a bond, and it's not used if it's not needed. But if it is, workers can be paid promptly that way. And right now, these cases, not just through BOLI, but also through the courts, can take many years to access.
So can you just explain the procedure? How does what initiates accessing it, and why does it go quickly?
Well, there are different ways to set it up, and in Washington State, they have a much better mechanism, I believe. But what we do here, in my experience, is really through the CCB, is you file a complaint with the CCB for construction. We could do this in other industries as well, but you would file your complaint with them. They would investigate it. They might be able to mediate it. If not, and the other side didn't want to pay through mediation or find an agreement, the CCB could then access that bond.
Okay, so the CCB can do that directly.
Yes,
Gotcha.
and I do have some more research I've done on wage bonds, and I would love to share that with you. And I'm just so excited that this committee exists and that there's this interest in care.
Thank you. The other question, the sort of Pollyanna question I wanted to ask is it possible that part of the increase in complaints to BOLI is a greater awareness that wage theft is a crime and there are people you can call to help you about it?
Well, I would like to think that there is growing awareness, and my organization and others, like the Carpenters, have been working to even popularize that phrase for a long time. So I do think there is some of that, but I also think what Councilor Green said is important, and what we see is that there are more and more employers who are happy to pay less and maybe get away with what they can on the backs of folks who, especially right now, are afraid to speak up. So I do think that it is probably increasing year over year, but I do also think what you said is true, that there's awareness, people are willing to speak up, and we certainly had a few good years there where workers were unionizing and recognizing they had power in their workplaces.
Thank you.
Councilor Knoll, do you have any closing statements on this?
Yeah, I really appreciate this being brought up. I want to thank you for being here as well as the presentation. I want to shout out one of my bosses in Seattle who still owes me about $700, just shy of that. So I have personal experience with that, and also the knowledge
Let's go get that money.
yeah. I'm okay now, but back then didn't have the money for small claims court. So to actually pursue that. And so I really appreciate this being brought up and having this conversation. The EPI study that was brought up in here, makes a couple, it has a lot of data and then extrapolates out and says that we could be looking at about $50 billion a year in aggregate wage theft. That's back in 2014. That's nationwide. And it's a really big issue that I think I would love to see us address the same way we care deeply about theft and addressing it in any other part of our society. So I'm looking forward to this continued conversation. I agree with Councilor Green. I'm also very happy to hear about an interest in legislation. And if the ratio we're looking at here is something in the ballpark of 3 to 1, then I think we should probably be prioritizing it at that level of importance as well. Thanks.
Ditto, 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 because I think what we should be doing is using our influence as counselors and our lived experiences should be able to help guide us into how we create policies and how we make the lives of the people who live in the city of Portland a whole lot better. So I thank you. I thank you, and I hope you would consider staying at the table. I'm going to call a couple more people up, and we're going to continue this conversation. We will dive a little bit deeper. So Keelan, could you call the next agenda item, please?
Item 2, wage theft in the construction industry.
Thank you. We're going to dive a little bit deeper into wage theft in the construction industry. As we've learned earlier, that there are a lot of gaps, and we're joined by Trappist Simmons, Jesus Sada, both longtime carpenters. Could you please join Ms. Sussman at the dais? And we'd like you to introduce yourselves for the record, including which organizations you are currently representing. But I would also appreciate you telling us a bit more about yourselves, how long you've worked in the carpentry industry and trade, and any other personal tidbits that you'd like to share, as we have tried to use our lived experience to make sure that we're creating policies that impact people down on the ground. Thank you. Thank you for being here today.
All right, thank you. Chair Smith, Vice Chair Green, City Council. For the record, my name is Trappist Simmons. I represent the Western States Regional Council of Carpenters. I have been a carpenter for 28 years this year. When I first started, I knew about, cash payments, but it only happened, residential. They would pay people, go work on the weekends. You would get paid cash. But now we're seeing that this has evolved into the biggest projects in the state of Oregon. You can find cash payments. My colleague will speak about some of those projects a little bit later, a little bit more detail. I would like to follow up what Kate had brought up about some of the different forms of wage theft that we see every day in the state of Oregon. She also brought up the fact that Seattle had good labor laws. And California has really good labor laws. Oregon has become a compression zone. If you're going to cheat workers and make money, Oregon is the place to come, currently. With the recent passing of Senate Bill 426, we're hoping we're going to slow that down a little bit. We're hoping we can get a transparency ordinance in place. And neither one of them are a silver bullet, but they will work in conjunction with each other and help out. But I will get on to the types of wage theft that we see every day.
I have a question for you. So do you think that we already have things on the books now, but you think that this transparency ordinance that we could do from the city level might encourage the state to do it statewide?
I would hope so, but I can't speak for the legislators.
Well, I mean, yeah, so the idea would be that we would want to make sure that it covers the city of Portland, which is a considerable amount of people who do business in the city of Portland, and one of the largest cities in Oregon. And I think oftentimes Multnomah County and the city of Portland, we can kind of give them a friendly nudge by putting these transparency ordinances into place. That would be helpful for a lot of folks.
That is our hope. That is our hope. We are actually taking a multi-prong approach. We are hitting Eugene at the same time,
Great.
Bend, and they're all taking a look at it currently. All right. So Kate had spoke about misclassification. I provided you with a couple examples of some certified payroll. Under example number 1, that's a prime example of misclassification. I think I just wrote a number 1 on there. Those are carpenters working on a bridge project, full prevailing wage. And I just pulled some numbers off of BOLI's website. I didn't even realize or look to see if it was the correct year, but in this example, typically a carpenter makes $71.50 an hour total package. That's with benefits and everything. A laborer currently makes $59.40 an hour. And what we see a lot is the unsophisticated contractors will classify everybody as labor because they save $12.10 an hour that they can put in their pocket. Now, they're not charging the job less. They're still charging the job the full amount. They're just saving $12.10. So that equals $484 a week per worker, which doesn't seem like a whole lot to, some people. But that's the difference between making rent, putting food on the table, keeping lights on. And because these workers are being misclassified, sometimes they have to resort to our safety net programs, like Multnomah County provides, the city provides, to make ends meet. It's not only lost revenue, but it's also a drain on, all of our safety net programs that we do have. The other example, I do believe I labeled it number 2, is just falsification of certified payroll. So there's no real, if you falsify certified payroll, there's no real threat. Bully's so understaffed and underfunded that, by the time they get to it, it becomes the cost of doing business. On that example I showed you right there, that's a school project. They have one carpenter that built that school. On that week that certified payroll represents, we had representatives that counted 7 carpenters plus that carpenter that they put on there. So effectively, those carpenters are being paid, God only knows. It's not in record. We can't get certified payroll from them. We don't even know who they are. This was a 3rd-tier contractor that the general contractor was unaware of. So on that week of certified payroll, you only see 1 entry for the week. Those other carpenters did not exist.
So what were they doing? They were paying them in cash, the other 6 workers? That's the...
On this example, I'm not 100% sure what they were doing. We didn't get, by the time we got certified payroll, the project's done, and we have no way to track them. I'm in the process of trying to figure out where they are, who they were. I know the name of the contractor that supplemented the workforce, but I don't know any of the workers.
Okay.
So potentially they could have been paid in cash. That is a common practice, even on prevailing wage jobs.
Or housing.
At a much lower rate.
Yeah.
And then withholding wages and stalling payments is really common, especially in the low-income housing, multifamily housing. The project starts off just fine. It may go for 2 or 3 months, not an issue with payroll. Then all of a sudden, they go to their workers and say, hey, the general contractor isn't paying me. We'll work this out. And so the workers continue to work. The next week, same thing. Hey, they're not paying me. This may go on for a month. But then all of a sudden, the employer brings them some money and says, hey, I mortgaged my house. I sold my truck. Whatever story he's saying, and they'll give them a portion of the wages owed, a very minimal portion of the wages owed. He said, hey, we'll sort this out. Let's finish this job out. The general contractor will pay me. And the vast majority of carpenters keep working for them. They believe that they're going to get paid eventually.
Right.
And there are some that do leave. And those are the ones that reach out to us and let us know what's going on. And, if we can help them, we help them fill out the paperwork for Bully. If not, we point them towards NWJP. That's very common, especially in the multifamily and low-income housing. A lot of times these carpenters that are building the housing can't afford to live in it, no matter what the AMI threshold is.
Right.
You guys, not you guys, but we are creating the self-licking ice cream cone. Every time we build more affordable housing, we're creating the need for more affordable housing because these workers are not getting paid. The other way is overtime violations. A lot of times, even if they get paid properly, the correct wage on a check, overtime hours are usually paid in cash. I've even heard a company tell workers that, hey, we can't pay overtime on this job, we'll get in trouble by Bully. But they put some money in the back of the envelope in cash that's untracked, and it says straight time. And a lot of these workers, especially in the multifamily, are working 6/10s. So they're racking up a little bit of overtime, and they're getting paid at straight time wages, and that's if they're getting paid at all. But the other one, so the last handout I gave you is a great article that was written in the Oregonian that sort of will, it's a little bit longer read, I would read it at your leisure, is the multi-tiering on a contract. We have a legitimate subcontractor that is awarded a project, but this project's too big for that subcontractor to actually man. So he reaches out to something that's called a labor broker. And that labor broker may have 5, 10 workers, and so they hire the labor broker. But yet there's still not enough workforce. So that labor broker reaches out to his friend, who's a labor broker, and he has another 10 or 12 workers. And it keeps working all the way down. Sometimes you see 5 layers of subcontracting under this. And each one of those labor brokers takes a cut from the total dollar amount. And each layer down that the carpenter gets a little less of the cut. Some of them are required to pay kickbacks, excuse me, because the labor broker got them a job. Right now, what we're hearing is kickbacks are 10 to 12% of their paycheck for the ability to work. Other times when they'll get paid in a check, but that check isn't written in their name. And they're directed to go to a specific check cashing location where they'll cash that check, where they're again charged upwards of 30% because of that article that's sitting in front of you. Now there's risk for cashing checks. So this worker, potentially 42% of his check is being taken for the privilege to work in the state of Oregon. So, and excuse me, I lost my place. In closing, wage theft isn't just theft from a worker. It's theft from their family, our tax system, and every other honest contractor that's trying to earn a living in the state of Oregon. I really suggest that, we do what we can, try to look at that transparency ordinance and try to fit it in. I don't know a lot of the legal stuff. I know they do it in other municipalities. I know Salem enacted it for specific projects, but I think it's something we should look at to try to help the vulnerable workers in the state of Oregon. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Simmons. And I hate to put you on the spot like this, what surprised me with some local housing developers who we would not think, I don't want to get you in trouble, but I want somebody to surprise me with a name of somebody, of a developer, of a housing that is participating in this practice of wage theft. Think about it.
I will tell you off record.
Okay.
I will.
That's fair. That's fair. Thank you so much, Mr. Simmons.
Thank you.
And Mr. Sada, could you please introduce yourself and let us know who you are, what you do, and give us a description of the problem that you see as it relates to wage theft.
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon, Chair Smith, Vice Chair Green, and Council. My name is Jesus Sauceda. I'm an organizer for the Western States Carpenters Union. I've been in the carpentry industry for about 15, 18 years, and along with Councilor Canal over there, a victim of wage theft myself, so it's real. Well, today I'm just here to share that what wage theft really looks like in real life, what's happening right now on job sites across our city. They're not stories from anywhere else. They're actually real life events that are happening here in Portland. These projects were built with public and private dollars, and they show exactly why stronger enforcement is needed. An example of one of them, the Julia West project. At the Julia West project, we found workers who are not receiving their full wages. The subcontractor they work for took a portion of those wages, money that should have gone towards health insurance and retirement benefits, and instead used it to buy soccer tickets. To this day, those workers still haven't been paid in full, and the benefits were never restored. The Buckley luxury condos. At the Buckley Luxury Condos projects, 20 wood framers were cheated out of their pay. One of them suffered a serious injury, losing a finger, and was forced to keep working with any time to recover or any kind of compensation for his injury. Lennar Homes residential project. On a Lennar Homes residential project, a worker is still owed over $40,000. She was required by her subcontractor to pay expenses out of her own pocket and was never fully reimbursed on or paid her wages in full. This worker came dangerously close to filing for bankruptcy just to survive, all because her employer decided that her paycheck was optional. These are just 3 examples of many, many job sites going on here in Portland that are currently going on or have been completed that this stuff happens on. But they represent dozens of workers and millions of dollars being stolen across Portland. These are honest people trying to make a living, building housing, schools, and public spaces for all of us, and instead they're being exploited and robbed. Now, to all of you in the room, our elected officials, if you want to come see it firsthand, I invite you to come with us to these job sites. Give me a call. I'll show you what's happening firsthand. We go on these job sites, boots on the ground, and we talk to these workers. I've done about 90% of the interviews in our office with these workers, and you'd be surprised some of the things some of the stories they have to share about wage theft and extortion. That's what I got. Thank you.
Thank you. That is just frightening that it is going on at the level that it's going on and how long it's been happening in our state of Oregon. And when you think about affordable housing, you think about closing a gap for a group of people who need affordable housing. But you don't stop to think that this could be a wage theft project. So I want to thank you. Similar to what you talked about before, if I were to introduce an ordinance to City Council to help eliminate wage theft in Portland, to the extent that we could, what elements of policy do you think that we should recommend or that I should include in an ordinance? And either one of you can answer that question.
Unfortunately, neither one of us are policy people. And we actually do have a policy person that I would gladly put you in touch with.
I would love to work with the carpenters and work with the community that is trying to so desperately eliminate this practice, to make sure that we can try to, close some of those gaps. Because what people are doing, they're taking food out of the mouths of families, and they're taking roofs over the head of people who are the most vulnerable, who are actually producing the housing. And that is just not right. And so I would love to be able to follow back up with you and have my staff contact you to figure out how we can actually make a difference in this, because this is real. I started with wage theft issues when I was a commissioner at Multnomah County, and I was just learning at the tip. This was in 2018, and we were had that dip in 2019, and to see that it has risen to the degree that it has, just in terms of the small BOLI claims. So I think this is important, and we're going to stay on it until we can try to eliminate this and make sure that people are getting the wages and the salaries and not being downgraded in whether they be a journeyman or a apprentice, that they're getting paid correctly. Councilor Smith, Councilor Green, help me out here.
Thank you, Counselor, although, I can't live up to you, so you get to keep your name.
Yes.
Echo everything you just said, you preached just now, but I just wanted to say I would love to take you up on your offer to come tour a job site. My chief of staff, Maria, is over here sitting there. We would love to connect with you and get some information and coordinate that. Because I think when you got your elected leaders who show up to these kind of places, that has a chilling effect on the behavior of the people who are exploiting these workers. And that's, you know, while we're going to do some legislation, it sounds like perhaps, we can do that too.
That sounds great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Green. Councilor Canal.
Same. I'd love to go on a tour as well. I don't know if my staff's in the room, but I can always bother Maria too.
But it looks like you have a trifecta of the members of the Labor and Workforce Committee. We got to talk to Robert to see if all of us can actually go on that trip together, because we would have quorum, and we are actually talking about putting a ordinance together. So we need to figure out how we do that and not go to budget jail. Councilor Dunphy, would you like to ask a question on this?
I mean, no, this is horrifying, but also I also want to go on a field trip. That sounds great. I'd love to see this, however that works out. But thank you guys for coming and testifying today.
I want to thank both of you for joining us today. Having you provide such an authentic and sincere explanation of wage theft and your firsthand experiences, it really brings the problem into focus. And a finer point, it is something that we see every day and we don't even know that it's happening. It's an invisible kind of crime, and I think we need to do whatever we can do in the city of Portland and through our own policies to make sure that people are getting paid what they're supposed to be getting paid, and that if we don't, that there are consequences. So thank you so much. I'm going to call up the next agenda item. If you have any other last words to say, you can say it now, but if not, I want to thank all three of you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you. And could you bring forward the agenda item 3?
Wage theft and caregiving.
Thank you. We will now move into a discussion about wage theft in healthcare, particularly among caregivers. Councilor Dunphy, would you like to introduce our guests? And I believe you and Councilor Green both may have some initial comments, as well as co-sponsors of this presentation, to get us started.
Hey, good afternoon. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to start by saying thank you for coming back. I know it takes a lot to take time out of your working day and really putting yourself out there, Tita, for this struggle, for not just you, but for everyone. This is really timely, and it connects well with the first presentation, because there was a slide that showed how wage theft is racialized and gendered. Yes. Because if you are Latinx woman, you're 3.1 times more likely to have your wages stolen than a white man, basically.
That's
and
correct.
It takes a lot of courage to engage in this struggle in this way. And I just, from the bottom of my heart, I thank you for that courage. And thank you, Chair, for letting us have this today.
Yeah, I'll just add that I think this is really important for us to be talking about this right now, especially with what is going on with the sort of terror that is happening in our community around immigration. I worry that the actions by the federal government towards people who are born elsewhere is going to have an effect on employers and could potentially encourage more bad behavior. So I will introduce our 3 speakers here. We have Freddie Mise. I'm sorry in advance if I screw up your last name. Community organizer with Migrante Portland. We have Tita Maria, our caregiver and community organizer, and Dr. Eileen Dula. Please help me.
You're on your own.
Duldalau.
Duldalau, yes,
Duldalau.
yes, Duldalau.
Which is who is a public health researcher, scientist, and epidemiologist.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you, and I apologize for.
That's okay. So we do have slides that we're presenting. How is that going to work? They're actually uploaded into the.
Yeah, we'll share our stories first, and then we'll put up the slides in a little bit. But yeah, if we could get yes.
Okay, great. So thank you everyone for giving us the opportunity to speak with you today. Special thanks to Councilors Dunphy, Avalos, and Green's office, and also to Maria Sibian for working directly with us. We'll be speaking today on wage theft among caregivers. My name is Dr. Eileen Dodolao, a public health research scientist and epidemiologist. I'm here with Tita Maria, a caregiver and community organizer, and Freddie Misay, a community organizer. We all belong to the Filipino migrant community here in Portland. So we will first hear stories about caregiving experiences from Tita Maria and Freddie, and then move on to some research and data. So Tita Maria and Freddie.
So what we'll do is have Tita Maria share her story directly. I will have to interpret. So Tita, pwede na pong ibahagi yung story niya tungkol sa...
Good morning po sa lahat. Kikwento ko lang po ang aking istorya. Nagtrabaho po akong 14 years sa Wilcare Adult Foster Home na pag-aari ni Jamie Lim and Dory Lim. Nagtrabaho akong 14 years na mababa ang sildo. Hindi ko naman alam kung tama yun o hindi kasi wala din talaga akong pinag-aralan. Kaya hindi ko alam. Ngayon nalaman ko na mayroon pala nagtutulong sa mga gaya sa akin na mababang sahod. Ngayon ko lang nalaman na mayroon na mga migrante. Sila ang nagtulong sa akin kaya naglakas loob ako na maglaban kan sa aking trabaho kung pwedeng ang maibalik yung tamang sildo sa akin ni Kuya Jimmy o ni Ate Dory ganoon. Tapos ang gusto ko pa na matulungan ako kaya nagpunta ako dito para kung pwede matulungan ibalik yung matamang sahod sa akin.
Pwede niyo pong idagdag.
Ang tinatrabaho ko, lahat ng ginagawa ko, ako lang mag-isa, naglilinis, sa mga 5 ang aking resident. Ako lang mag-isa, may hoyorly pa, naggugupit pa ako, naglilinis, nagluluto, naglalaba pa, nagpapaligo ng mga pasyente, mga resident ko. Ako lang mag-isa. Hindi naman ako nila tinutulungan. Na palagi silang around the world. Ako lang ang nandoon. Kaya nakikiusap ako sa inyo na kung pwedeng matulungan ako, maibigay yung ibang sildo na hindi niya ako binayaran na sapat. Ako lang din ang inaasahan ng mga apo kong pinaparal sa Philippines. Yun lang po. Thank you po sa inyo lahat.
Thank you.
So Tita said, good morning to all. I worked for 14 years at WellCare Adult Foster Home owned by Dory and Jamie Lim. I didn't know that my wages were low. Well, one, because I didn't go to school. When I learned that there were people like Migrante who were helping out, I found the courage to fight for my wages back that I deserve. I would like your help. That's why I'm here today. I cared for 5 residents, did everything. I cleaned, cooked, showered, gave medications. One of them also I helped with Hoyer Lift. I was there alone. Oftentimes my boss were always traveling around the world. And so, yeah, I'm here again to ask for your help to get my wages back. And really, because this is for my grandchildren that's in the Philippines. Yeah, she's the breadwinner for her grandchildren. Just to add to that, salamat tita. Just to add to that, just some additional things in our findings is that she was, in her pay stub, she was a salaried employer, is what the pay stub has shown. And so the impact of that is it kind of, the boss were able to get around with it by making it seem like she was a salaried employer and not an hourly employer, which means she couldn't pay, wouldn't get overtime pay and all that. The other thing is she's at retirement age, and so when we went to go to help her out to get her retirement, because of in the records of years of working, it shows as if she didn't work that much, and therefore she actually can't get what she deserved for retirement. And so, yeah. The other thing is Tita doesn't really read English or write. She only finished 4th grade, and so she read minimally in Tagalog, and was actually shown a contract that she ended up signing, not really realizing that it said she was supposed to work as a housekeeper. But really all the things she did, and also asking some of her coworkers and other witnesses have shared that she's done a lot of like caregiving and not housekeeping responsibilities. And in that contract too, it was written that she would get $2,500 a month, but never in any of the pay stubs that she kept on record. Upon careful review, none of it showed that amount. And so that's an example. Additional caregivers in the area, I'm sharing their stories, we have someone I'm calling today Ate S, who's a caregiver in Beaverton, actually, and she was employed for a month or two at a memory care facility and never received her paychecks totaling of $2,000 for 1 month. She quit and filed a claim with the State Labor Board with the help of her sister, and that was like in 2024, December, and she still today hasn't received it. Another story I'm naming today, Ate A. She was also being underpaid at another care home in Portland where she worked, and she got help from a friend in calculating her paychecks, and it was obviously not accurate, and when she raised it to the management, they retaliated against her and fired her. So these are just additional stories that we were able to gather. But knowing that there's more people who are experiencing this and are fearful of standing up, because one, they don't really know their rights, and then two, because of the fear of retaliation, because of like potentially losing their jobs, especially for Filipino caregivers who rely so much on the even little income that they get, because again, we have families that were also trying to ensure they have food on their table, or when floods and like calamities in the Philippines hit, like we have like the families who are working overseas are the ones also needing to provide for them. So those are just additional couple examples in Portland. And then lastly, this is also a bigger issue of caregivers across the country, actually. Under Migrante USA, we've been learning about many other wage theft in the caregiving industry in Southern California, Northern California, Northeast, similarly of facing the same, not being compensated for working nights, for working more than the responsibility that they are supposed to do, and adding more tasks to them, and even to the point where people are getting paychecks that are going bounced. So those are additional things that we are also seeing across the country. And so just to close it off, with community organizing and really educational with the caregivers and workers themselves, they are finding the courage to raise their voices like Tita Maria, to get their stories heard, and to really fight for what is just and right for them. And so from the East Coast to the West Coast and in Oregon, Portland, Filipino caregivers along with Migrante are coming together to fight until justice is really served. So that's my brief sharing there. Oh, and then, sorry, just an additional thing. When caregivers do find the courage to fight, and they're out there really getting their stories heard, like Tita Maria. When we started making all of her stories in public since April of this year, her former employer actually, what is that called? Threatened or retaliated, threatened to get her deported if she doesn't stop. Stop like making noise or stop sharing the story.
Yeah, she was threatened with deportation if she doesn't be quiet. Yeah.
Wow.
And that's a real threat, especially in this particular context.
And that's where like we have to also then additional, we do have as migrants also have the right to to fight for the truth.
Exactly.
So yeah, that's kind of like the story side, and then I'll pass it to Dr. Eileen here, who would share more on like the data and more additional.
Councilor Duffy, I have a quick question. I want to go back to what you said earlier. You said that she was supposed to be getting a check for $2,500. And just curious, what was she getting in cash?
She received, tita, meron po kayong pay stubs, diba? Pero yung ano po yung nakuha ninyo sa bayad? Cash ba or check?
Cheque.
Yeah. So she did receive checks, but in the checks there were moments of just like 485, or at the most within like a month it's like 1,000.
So she was expecting $2,500, and she only got about 1,000.
Yeah, at the most.
At the most.
And when we even looked through her pay stub, there was a lot of violations, and we checked in with an attorney about it to confirm. And yeah, it was like missing a lot of like things that's supposed to be in a pay stub.
Like the FICA information.
Right.
Yeah, like deductions of things, like, it's kind of wacky.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. D. I'm not going to try to pronounce your name.
All good.
But go ahead.
I get it. I totally get it. So moving to the slides, this is just a list of questions that we were asked to maybe address in our presentation. Go to the next slide. So we did our best to attempt to address this information. So wage theft is a widespread issue in industries and occupations where immigrant workers are concentrated, like caregiving, the garment industry, and domestic work. And there's actually a lot of parallels with the construction industry. These workers often face multiple vulnerabilities, limited English speaking, proficiency, undocumented status, low income and lower education levels. These factors not only increase their risk of exploitation, but also make it harder for them to report violations. As we see in Tita Maria's case, it took her 14, 15 years to even get assistance, to even know that something wrong was happening, let alone be able to report what was happening to any kind of authority. As a result, wage theft is underreported, and the data we have is likely underrepresents the true scale of the problem, especially here in Oregon. Next slide. And we know that, next slide. Women of color are disproportionately affected by wage theft in the care industry. A 2021 U.S. Department of Labor initiative found violations in 80% of investigations in the sector. Nearly 25,000 workers, mostly Filipina, Black, Hispanic, and Asian women, were impacted with over $28 million in recovered wages. Common violations included unpaid overtime, below minimum wage pay, and misclassification as independent contractors, or like we saw in the case of Tita Maria, being classified as a housekeeper but doing direct patient care, which is a type of misclassification, which basically denies workers basic protections. And next slide. So immigrants make up to almost a third of the long-term care workforce in the United States, yet we lack specific data on wage theft among this group at the local and state level. So it's really hard to find city, county, state level information about this phenomenon. However, we do know that immigrant workers in Oregon are more vulnerable to wage theft than their U.S.-born counterparts. And so we kind of heard a bit of this in the last presentation from the construction workers. In fact, what we see is a difference by race, gender, and citizenship status. So you are correct in what you observe, Councillor Green, with the race and gender, but we want to add this also dimension of citizenship status as well. This very top bar reflects that Latino women who are non-citizens are 3.7 times more likely to be paid less than minimum wage than white males who are citizens. And this is in Oregon. And this highlights that wage theft is intersectional and highlights inequities in gender, race, and citizenship status. And it also highlights the need for more targeted data collection, policy interventions to protect immigrant workers, especially immigrant caregivers and other sort of industries that really face a lot of wage theft, including construction. Next slide. So in Oregon, wage theft is a really significant issue, as we heard in the last presentations. Between 88,000 and 128,000 workers are underpaid each year, and that's about 4% to 6% of the workforce in Oregon. This results in an estimated $283 to $405 million in lost wages annually, just from minimum wage lost in minimum wage violations alone. And enforcement is limited due to capacity issues at BOLI, which may change with the recent legislation that was passed. And they've implemented an income cap, only investigating cases under 250% of the poverty line, which has led to the automatic dismissal of 17% of cases. This policy unintentionally excludes many low-wage workers who all still face serious violations. So I'm not a labor and workforce researcher. I'm a public health researcher. But what I found is that the issue isn't necessarily that Oregon has doesn't have strong policy. We don't have strong enforcement of our policy. So we have good policy, right? We just don't have very good enforcement, and that in fact is an issue of capacity at BOLI. I know that we tried to go to BOLI with Tita Maria's case. We really didn't get anywhere due to these capacity issues happening at BOLI. And since then, we've had other workers who had wage theft issues, not just in caregiving, but other industries. And we just know that, if we do go to BOLI and try to file a case, it's just not gonna go anywhere. We also tried to go to the US Department of Labor, and that also didn't really, we made calls, sent emails, that really didn't go anywhere. There's also different barriers as to, the size of the care home and things like that, that just didn't make reporting at the federal level possible as well. So that's why we've been waging this kind of grassroots campaign, this people-powered campaign, because we know that the people have the power, right? And so that's why we're here. So thank you so much. We're open to questions.
Thank you. I'm going to go to my colleagues, Councillor Novick.
Yeah, the examples you gave were about care homes. I was wondering about home care for individual families. Are those situations like is it the Home Care Commission is making the payments with Medicaid dollars, so there's not really such a risk of wage theft, or is there wage theft in home care as well?
There probably is. I think that when the more like the more intimate the setting is what I found. The more intimate the setting, the more likelihood that you will find abuse. So especially with domestic workers, people that work as housekeepers, as maids, as in childcare, you will have really high levels of wage theft, because also those types of industries are also really dominated by immigrants, by women, right? By people that are also people of color. And so anytime you have that intersection of people of color, of women, of immigrants, you will find a lot of abuse when it comes to labor abuses. But you will also find a lack of data, right? Because of those intersecting identities, and especially now because people are afraid of being deported or losing their jobs, right, of retaliation. They're very unlikely to report. And then you combine that with agencies that are very unlikely to file a report or be available to pick up that phone and talk to the person. You just end up with 14 to 15 years of people having to suffer these kinds of abuses and not, literally not getting paid. And like what you were saying, this is food being stolen from people. This is like housing being stolen. It's not just for Tita Maria. It's like, it goes down, like it's for her family. It goes down generations too.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Dr. D, just want to go back. Is Tina working right now? Not working?
Not right now.
Okay. I'm going to ask you a similar question that I asked the two earlier panels. If I were to draft an ordinance addressing wage theft in Portland and wage theft among caregivers, particularly, what policy elements should I include in that ordinance? And would you be willing to help us to gather the information to create such a vehicle?
Policy?
Yes. Because one of the things that I wrote down that was key, you said it's not the issue of whether or not the policies are there, whether or not there's capacity to enforce it. And so I want to make sure that there is an enforcement mechanism inside of any ordinance that I do. And I would love to have your help and assistance as we're drafting this, to be able to look at and see if it's something that you could support.
I mean, I have to understand more about how California have done it, for example, but the Bill of Rights in the caregiving industry that really does really enforce that.
So they have
regulation.
a caregiver Bill of Rights in California?
That really enforce more regulation in the caregiving industry. I have to do more research, but something along those lines.
And you don't have to get that deep. I think what I'm looking for is, once we draft something, if I could call you on the phone and send you an email and say, is this something that you think that would be helpful? Because I only want to do something that you all think would help to, one, eliminate wage theft, and two, to have the teeth in an ordinance that would enforce it.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be a policymaker.
I'm totally down for that, and I think that, I think especially because we've gone to multiple, agencies and have not been successful in getting redress, and I think having that, especially if there's a way to address the retaliation, the fear of retaliation that we've experienced, that would be really, I think, helpful in having more folks, come forward. And and I also sense that among the folks from the construction industry too, there's a fear of coming forward, with what's happening. And if there's a way to address that, that would be,
I understand. Councilor Green, you have a couple of questions?
Yeah, I just want to riff off of what you're kind of laying down here, Councilor. I would love to see us kind of iterate back and forth in a dialogue. So when you bring forward your draft, it'd be great to have that kind of question about the pieces of the legislation here with whoever wants to come and participate in that and help us generate that data from the community. Dr. Dodola?
Correct.
Dr. Doldalao, yes.
Thank you. You had mentioned that we lack some sort of granular detail at the local level. And so maybe this process helps us generate that a little bit. And also in arts and economy, we had started providing this kind of work session style space a little bit to have an informal discussion about the creation of it in the open, so that way we're not violating public meetings law, but still advancing forward on legislation that we think has teeth. So I'd be very favorable to that type of format.
Yeah, and I think also really grounding it in the experiences of the folks that are experiencing this phenomenon, like really grounding it in the people experiencing wage theft, and grounding it in the construction workers' experience, like grounding it in Tita Maria's experience, like really making it very community-led and community-grounded, I think, would be really helpful. Yeah.
That is the only way to do policy.
Yes,
And
thank
you have talked to agencies who were in charge of enforcement. They weren't policymakers, and we're policymakers. That's what we do. And so I like nothing better than to ground it in community to make sure that we're getting the best piece of policy and that you'll come out and talk about it. Councilor Dunphy, could you ask your question?
Thank you. Yeah, sort of building on what both of you have just said, I'm reflecting back on the earliest presentation here about deputizing individuals to enforce. I mean, if we have great state law and nobody to enforce it, it's not the same. It doesn't matter. And I've also noticed certainly that the city of Portland historically, if they care about something, they call it out by its name and they hire somebody to care about that thing. And I know we are in a budget crisis, and it is hard to be able to imagine hiring new employees, but I do wonder if there just might be some way within our existing bureaucratic systems to have additional capacity or to enforce state law or to at least help navigate that. I don't even think, I know that the issue is so much bigger that the city would never be able to hire enough people to actually handle that, but I do want, wonder if there might be something we can do.
I think you're correct. I mean, once we get complaints,
Right.
because we have a whole auditor's office that is designed to investigate complaints, and that's what they do. And we can actually refer some of this to the auditor's office, and if we want a wage theft coordinator, that's something that we can put in the budget.
And I also wonder if there might also be an opportunity for either deputizing a nonprofit with a private right of, what's the term? What their ability to sue on behalf of, private right of action, thank you. Can't find words today. Private right of action involving the private community or private sector, or finding ways to that won't simply rely on diminishing public budgets and public bureaucrats. So I'm really open. I would love to be, I hope this committee will take some time to explore some interesting options and maybe do some creative problem solving around this. Please.
Can I add one more thing? Sorry. I think an additional thing to engage particularly in the Filipino business-owned care facilities, because Tita Maria's employers are Filipinos, and there is a Filipino-American Chamber of Commerce, PACO, that I think would be a place where the councilors, the labor committee could also engage with and further have this kind of discussion, because it is these like small business owners that are the ones supposed to be also upholding the rights of the workers and are not. And so I think it's another place to have these kind of conversation, I think. So there would be something, a particular great thing to do after, for Tita's case, to show an example of how, this level of government can work with other organizations.
I like that idea. Yeah. Writing that down. Councilor Cano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you all for being here, Freddie, Tita Maria, and Dr. Dolelau. I really appreciate all the information you give, and both in terms of the initial presentation and the responses to questions. I did want to highlight, I think it's really notable to point out that Tita Maria's employers are Filipino, right? So it's an important thing that whatever we do, we're going to need to have staff that can master multiple different cultural contexts in order to engage with not only folks who might be victims of this and are dealing with it, but also the folks who may be doing it. So that's a really important thing to kind of keep in mind. And I don't know that the city has a historic pattern of being good at that. No. As someone who worked in community engagement for the city for 3 years, I do know that we don't have a good track record of doing that citywide. There's some places that are significantly better than others. I also know that we need to, I'm not 100% sure where this authority lives, but there is authority for the auditor to decline or accept taking on new work. So we're going to need to have that conversation with that office and figure out where they think their role is. But I do think that one of the, in addition to the issue with ensuring that there's enough support for the community engagement side and a strong engagement approach at the city, which I am very concerned about the direction that things have been going in the budget on that. I also am very concerned about the direction that the budget's been going as it relates to the Office of Equity and Human Rights, which I think is going to be a big part of at least the Know Your Rights elements that we're talking about here, making sure that folks understand what their rights are and what whatever avenue of recourse we create are. So while I do think that we might have been more suited to do what Councillor Dunphy suggested, which is incorporate this into our existing resources prior to June when we cut OEHR again. But I don't know that there's enough capacity to take on anything new right now in that agency without new money, because of what we saw proposed and then enacted as it relates to OEHR. So
How we move around money, Counselor.
yes.
So I just want to.
Yeah, I don't mean new money in the terms of new revenue.
Right.
I mean new allocation to OEHR.
But let me tell you this. Anyone can call the auditor's office and make a claim, particularly for a contractor that is procuring
Yes.
through us,
Yes.
and say, I believe there's some wage theft. That is not negotiable. You can call the auditor and ask them to look into it. And so to that part, I think that we have an ability to do that. And I think, there are ways to move things around. And as we will see coming up in our next TAL, we'll see what our beginning balance is going to be. So don't throw out the baby in the bathwater at the same time, because I think there are opportunities for us to make sure that we, you get what you get, and we have to make it make sense. And they made it make sense to me today on the construction front, on the affordable housing and the caretaking, and what our housing, our affordable housing developers are doing. I'm really upset about this. I want to go on that tour. I want to make sure that we craft a piece of legislation that helps people immediately. And where there is a will, there is a way. And I'm committed to it, Councillor Canal.
Yeah, I appreciate that clarification on what is already enabled with the auditor's office, the ombudsman, all that whole process. Yep. So I think we may need to act in terms of those that we are not directly paying city dollars to already through a contract, to see existing sort of separate private sector situations. And I would love to be a part of that with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Novick.
I just wanted to say this has been one of the best committee meetings I've been in the past 9 months. So I want to thank everybody who testified. One thing I wanted to mention that I thought was really compelling was the data showing that wage theft exceeds, property crime theft in terms of value. That should make people look up and take notice. So thank you, and Chair Smith, for putting this together. And I also have to say, I'd like to thank Councillor Green for using the phrase, I want to riff off of what you're laying down. Now, I think that language went out of vogue before he was born. Maybe Councillor Smith he was still younger than me, can remember when people used to talk that way, but it took me back to 1969.
No, it wasn't my language, but I understand. I understand. some of these phrases that came before me. I am a student of history, but I just want to thank all of you for coming today. And Ms. Maria, I know you've been featured in a few news stories locally in Street Roots, but also some national coverage. And I imagine that it's been quite the experience for you. And I, like Councilor Novick, this has really gotten my blood moving about this. Taking stuff from the most vulnerable people in our community, it makes me mad. And so I want to do something about this. It's tough being in the public eye sometimes, but I hope that these stories and the stories that we know about from others, that we can highlight them and we can do something about it in real time. And I think time has been not on our side, because by the time that you cycle through getting someone to investigate, they've moved on to another project. And this whole idea about these labor consultants, I was just floored that there's like 5 levels of labor consultants. It's ridiculous and it's out of control. So there are some new sheriffs in town, some new chairs in town and vice chairs, and this is really, it has me excited about doing something about it, because it really changes the lives of people who are coming here, who have a language barrier, who are wanting to do the right thing and to work, and the people here are not allowing them to do that. And that's where we come in and close the gap, Councilor Knoll. Councilor Dunphy, Councilor Green, thank you so much for your contribution to today's agenda. I appreciate it. If there are any other questions, Councilor Knoll, you have another question? That is a legacy hand. If there are no discussions, we will adjourn the meeting, and we'd like to get some pictures with you afterwards. Thank you so much.
Thank you.